Hey everyone, tonight we're venturing somewhere gloomier than a castle cellar, funkier than a stable, and packed with more regret than a medieval dinner party gone wrong. Welcome to the brothel, where romance takes its final breath, and hygiene clearly missed the invitation. Before you get too cozy, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe. But only if you're the kind of person who enjoys dozing off to slightly uncomfortable but extremely accurate history. Leave a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time your clock says. It's always fun seeing this strange little community come alive around the world. Now dim the lights. Tuck yourself in and let's dive into one of history's most misunderstood places. Ever wondered what a medieval brothel was really like? Was it plush pillows, candlelit charm, and endless wine? Or was it more like drafty walls, shady stew, and clients who hadn't seen soap since last century? How did brothel workers make it? Through nights filled with more chaos than a royal wedding, more rules than a monastery, and personal hygiene levels that would horrify your high school gym locker? What was on the menu? What did people actually wear? Could anyone get any rest, or was it just medieval customer service on hard mode with bonus arrests? Let's find out. Congratulations. You've just opened your eyes in the year 1352, right in the heart of the medieval red light quarter. You're shivering, dazed, mildly hungover from some ale that likely had more mold than grain. And the night ahead is about to make you appreciate every boring Tuesday of your modern life. You shuffle through a crooked alley that reeks of ancient cabbage, only to find a creaky door under a flickering sign, one that groans louder than your joints. Inside, the air is heavy with smoke, cheap perfume, and the frantic tension of people who all insist their name is Marjorie Dot. Welcome to your new home for the night. Don't mind the rats. They came with the place. Let's set the scene. You're cold. You're tired, and you've lost feeling in your feet somewhere around the third puddle you stepped in. The alleyway behind you is bustling with the suspiciously specific sounds of medieval nightlife, the crash of a drop-it tankard, the distant shouting of someone bearing over onions, and the unmistakable splat of a chamber pot's contents making its daily escape into the street. If you're thinking this is just a regular inn with a little extra atmosphere, think again. The medieval brothel is part boarding house, part tavern, part fever dream, and entirely unlike anything your high school history teacher dared to mention. As you cross the threshold, you're immediately hit with a wall of mixed aromas, stale beer, tallow candles, damp wool, and whatever someone tried to cover up with a handful of lavender. The perfume here isn't so much worn as it is weaponized, layering over centuries of mysterious stains and embedded regrets. If there's a draft, it's not coming from the windows. It's the collective sigh of everyone realizing there's no turning back now. The first thing you notice is the decor, which lands somewhere between forgotten attic and creative fire hazard. The furniture is mismatched, mostly inherited from customers who failed to pay their tab or simply vanished mid-winter. There's a lopsided table holding a single candle that threatens to expire at any moment. Three-legged stools occupied by people with two working legs and questionable morals, and a faded tapestry on the wall, depicting either a biblical miracle or someone dropping a pie. It's unclear. You're greeted, if that's the right word, by someone in a bonnet whose main job appears to be glaring suspiciously at newcomers. They didn't ask for your name. Nobody here cares about names, but they do ask if you're paying up front. You nod, trying to look like someone who knows how money works. Coins are exchanged, counted, recounted, and then immediately pocketed. Receipts aren't invented yet. Your only proof of payment is the faint hope that the madam has a good memory. Let's talk about the other guests. A traveling merchant snores face down on the bar, having lost both his money and his shoes. Two local farm hands sit in the corner, whispering loudly enough for the entire room to hear as they attempt to muster the courage to talk to Marjorie. though which Marjorie is up for debate. A minor noble in an ill-fitting doublet is trying and failing to blend in. He's the only one whose boots haven't been chewed by rodents. You're shown to your accommodation, which is just a small drafty room separated from the next, swept by a threadbare curtain and the collective willpower of the building's occupants. The mattress is a sack stuffed with straw, crunchy and uneven. Dotted with stains you hope are wine, but suspect are older than the 100 Years' War. A candle barely taller than your thumb flickers on the floor, threatening to extinguish itself out of pity. But the real stars of the show are your roommates. You've got 2 house cats of indeterminate color, 1 mouse braver than most nights, and an ancient grumpy rooster who seems to be here against his will. Every sound is amplified. The scraping of bowls, the clink of coins, the muffled argument about whether last week's bread is technically still edible. Through the thin wall, you can hear laughter, sobbing, and the occasional medieval version of customer service gone wrong. Just as you're settling in, the madam herself appears. She surveys you with the world-weary eyes of someone who's seen too many people try to pay in buttons. She offers you a cup of wine, which is suspiciously thick and tastes like it might have been strained through an old sock. You drink anyway. It's either this or the well water, and nobody recommends the well water. As night falls and the brothel truly wakes up, you realize your modern problems, like losing Wi-Fi or not getting enough oat milk, are nothing compared to finding out you're not alone in your room. You pull your scratchy blanket over your head, listen to the distant sounds of medieval nightlife, and make a note to thank your ancestors for inventing walls, locks, and soap. And so, your first night in the Mesaville Brothel begins. If you survive until morning, you might just get breakfast, assuming the rooster lets you sleep at all. Welcome to history's worst Airbnb, forget royalty. The brothel madam is the true boss here. She runs the show with an iron ladle, a razor tongue, and the uncanny ability to detect unpaid tabs across 3 rooms. She size you up in seconds and decide whether you're trouble, a customer, or worst of all, competition. Let's talk about power. Kings might rule kingdoms, but the madam rules something far scarier. A building full of desperate workers, demanding customers, and livestock that don't pay rent. She's got more authority than the local constable, more charisma than the traveling friar, and a memory for debts that puts accountants to shame. She remembers every coin, every broken promise, and every sock left under a mattress since last. Michaelmas, you spot her right away, partly because she's the only person not rushing anywhere. She floats through chaos with the confidence of someone who has nothing left to fear. Not fire, not famine, not even the city's annual Clean Up the Streets Day. Her dress is made of several eras worth of fashion stitched together into one intimidating patchwork of velvet, wool, and hope. Her hair is wound up tight, not a single strand out of place, as if daring the lice to even try. With one raised eyebrow, she can silence a brawl, and with a single shout, she can summon every worker, cleaner, and chicken in the building to her side. Her weapon of choice, not a sword, but the world's sharpest wooden spoon. Perfect for breaking up fights, poking at suspicious stew, or rapping. The knuckles of anyone slow to pay. The madam's day begins before sunrise and ends never, actually. She keeps a ledger under lock and key, though honestly, her brain is probably safer than any lock in the city. She juggles bookings, checks supplies, negotiates prices, and keeps the peace with a diplomatic skill the Pope would envy. Someone once tried to shortchange her with a counterfeit coin. Legend says she chased him through 3 streets and got her money back, plus interest and a complimentary goose. She knows every secret in the district. If you want gossip, the madame already knows how it ends. If you want credit, she'll laugh in your face, then offer you a bowl of soup as a consolation prize. She has a network of spies, mostly nosy neighbors and bored cats, who report on every visitor, late payment, and missing towel. The city baif, she calls him by his childhood nickname. And if he shows up for a random inspection, she offer him tea and a gentle reminder about that one time he lost a boot in her cellar. The madam is part boss, part therapist, and part medieval alarm system. She mediates arguments about whose turn it is to use the good pillow, soothes heartbreaks with a mixture of tough love and Dale bread, and can spot a liar from a mile away. She gives new workers the once-over with a gaze that says, "I've seen worse, but not much." Try to outwit her, and you'll find yourself cleaning the yard for a week, or worse, assigned to feed the geese. Every now and then, a customer tries to sweet-talk his way into a discount or a free drink. The madam deals with this by telling a story. So embarrassing, so horrifying, and so personalized that even the most persistent cheapskate suddenly remembers he left the oven on at home. Rumor has it she once convinced the local lord to pay double just for the privilege of not being mentioned by name at dinner. Despite her tough exterior, there's a strange sort of loyalty in the house. The workers might grumble about her rules, but when the city guard comes knocking or a brawl threatens to spill into the street, it's the madam everyone relies on. She's the only one who can get the oven working, calm down an angry client, and scare away rats with a single clap. To outsiders, the madam might seem intimidating, maybe even cruel, but to her people, she's the last line of defense against the world's chaos. She gives out loans with interest, advice, whether you want it or not, and the occasional hug, strictly after hours and never in public. In the end, she's the reason the brothel keeps going. Without her, the roof would cave in, the stew would burn, and everyone would be sleeping in the alley with the goats. So if you find yourself in a medieval brothel, be polite, pay promptly, and never underestimate the power of a woman with a ledger, a spoon, and a list of grudges longer than the Magna Carta. Before you can get comfortable, you're handed a list of house rules longer than a church sermon. No fighting, no free samples, no credit, and for the love of all that's holy, no singing after midnight. Soap is strictly rationed and only slightly used. Let's take a closer look at these legendary rules. Because surviving a medieval brothel isn't just about stamina, it's about obedience. First, you'll notice the rules are handwritten on a scrap of parchment and a suspiciously blotchy ink. Some rules look recently added, possibly after last night's incident with the goose. Others are so ancient, even the madam's not sure what they mean anymore. No juggling torches in the main room. Someone definitely learned that lesson the hard way. Rule number 1, no fighting inside the house. This is not a lawless tavern or a medieval brawl pit. If you must challenge someone to a duel, kindly do. So outside, preferably out of sight of a town guard. Broken chairs cost money, and the madam isn't interested in adding furniture repair to her already packed schedule. You'll think that bruised egos are to be handled quietly behind the privy, or with a mutual exchange of passive-aggressive glares. Next up, no free samples. The brothel may be the medieval world's answer to customer service, but it draws the line at charity. Anyone caught giving away the goods for free is promptly put on laundry duty, which means boiling bed sheets in a cauldron big enough to drown your hopes in. Strangely, no one ever asks for seconds. No credit ever, and the madam means it. Forget about paying tomorrow. Forget I left my purse at home. Unless you're royalty, and even then your night begins and ends with cash on the barrel. Any attempts to barter, swap by US, or pawn off your second best chicken will be met with a look of disappointment so severe it could sour fresh milk. No singing after midnight. This rule is strictly enforced following a legendary week when an ambitious apprentice bard serenaded the entire block with his song of 12 turnips. Everyone agreed it was a catchy tune for the first 5 minutes. The punishment for late-night singing now includes floor mopping, animal wrangling, and a temporary ban on soup. Now let's talk about the soap. The most valuable, hotly contested, and heartbreakingly rare item in the building. The rule is simple: thou shalt not steal the soap. This is both practical and philosophical. The soap is at best a shrunken nub, of mystery origin passed down from guest to guest, and containing at least 5 distinct scents, none of them pleasant. If you steal it, the entire house will know, because you'll be the only one who smells vaguely like week old lye instead of goat. Soap usage is strictly supervised. Workers are allowed a ceremonial hand washing before dinner and an actual bath on alternate saints' days. For customers, it's a privilege, not a right. If you're spotted sneaking an extra scrub, prepare for the madam's wrath and a lengthy lecture on community hygiene. Considering the average medieval person bathes once a month, the mere existence of house soap borders on luxury, no livestock upstairs. That's another popular rule added after an incident involving a chicken, 2 goats, and a bucket of ale. Let's just say the lesson was learned and the stains have never quite come out of. The carpet. If your animal can't pay, it sleeps outside. There are also a few unspoken rules you'll pick up fast. Don't ask too many questions about what's in the stew. Never comment on someone's real name, especially if they insist it's Marjorie. And if the rooster comes inside, just let him be. He's gotten your. These rules aren't just for show. They're the glue holding the chaos together. Without them, every night would devolve into a riot of spilled ale, broken furniture, and at least one small fire. The madame knows this and enforces. Order with the grim determination of a medieval schoolmaster with a hangover. Everyone, worker, guest, goat, falls in line or quickly wishes they had. So, as you settle in, clutching your precious sliver of soap and practicing your best silent hum, remember, in the medieval Brothel, obedience isn't just for fun. It's for survival. 'Cause nothing ruins a night faster than the madame finding out. You tried to take the soap. You thought medieval brothel were all silk and mystery. Think again. Most workers wear threadbare linen, patched wool, and the occasional hand-down tunic that seem more action than a night shield. Accessories include decorative fleas and a faint air of regret. Let's set aside everything you've learned from Racy. Paintings and big-budget TV dramas. An aerial medieval brothel, luxury was mostly an optical illusion, like those velvet curtains that turn out to be sheep's wool dyed a heroic shade of burgundy. The actual dress code is determined by 2 things: what's warm and what hasn't fallen apart yet. If you're picturing sultry robes and a feathered mask, adjust your expectations to layered potato sack with bonus holes. The most popular fabric in the brothel is linen. At least what used to be linen before centuries of hard labor, hasty repairs, and enthusiastic laundering turned it into something that can only be described as historically durable. The standard issue under tunic is a washed-out beige, but sometimes it's more of a question mark color, thanks to the shifting patterns of stains that even the most optimistic washerwoman has given up on. And that lacy trim, it's just where the fabric frayed. Call it medieval distressed chic. Above the linen, there's usually a woolen overdress, hand-patched and repatched until it looks like a map of disappointment. Sometimes there's a faded apron to add a little functional flair. If you're lucky, you'll get a borrowed shawl, scratchy, but good at hiding the fact that your sleeves are different lengths. Brothel workers swap clothes more often than stories, so every garment has lived a full life and probably holds more secrets than the city bath. Shoes, meanwhile, are an exercise in compromise. The house issues a few battered pairs passed around like a communal bread loaf. Some have holes, some have mismatched laces, and all of them have a faint, persistent dampness that can only be described as ambiguous. Many simply go barefoot, which is as medieval as it gets, until you step on something sharp and instantly regret centuries of technological progress. Let's not forget the true stars of the dress code lice. Lice are not just a hazard of the job, they're practically a uniform. In an era when bathing is a quarterly event in combs or a status symbol, fleas and lice thrive in every hum, collar, and unfortunately personal crevice. Brothel fashion means you never dress alone. Scratching is so common, it's become a house. Rhythm like the soft clink of coins or the occasional distant sound of someone falling down the stairs. Jewelry is minimal and highly practical. The average brothel worker might have a scrap of ribbon, a bit of colored glass on a string, or a lucky pin kept for protection or poking over eager customers. Real gold, only if someone left it behind in a hurry. And in that case, it's immediately claimed by the madam for the Communal Improvement Fund, which mysteriously never improves anything except the madame's collection of suspiciously nice hats. Hairstyles are simple and functional. Hair pulled back in a knot hidden under a cap or plaited to keep it out of the communal soup. Lice treatments are homemade, ranging from vinegar rinses to hopeful prayers. The house keeps a communal brush, but it's rumored to be cursed. The air of regret is a less tangibly accessory, but it hangs about every outfit nonetheless. There's something about wearing the same tunic you've seen on 5 different co-workers and 3 customers that humbles the soul. If you catch yourself longing for a velvet corset, just remember velvet in medieval times was so expensive it would get you robbed, arrested, or both. Here you're safer in your patchwork, and if you really want to stand out, clean socks, the rarest luxury. If you own a pair, guard them with your life. They'll be borrowed, bartered, and possibly stolen by the end of the week. In a world without fabric softener or scented dryer sheets, the simple joy of warm, non-damp socks is the closest thing to heaven a brothel worker is likely to experience. So, next time you complain about your laundry day, spare a thought for the brothel dress code. Less lace, more lice, and a fashion sense best described as apocalypse chic. If you want to make it through the night, wear whatever you can, patch it with pride, and remember, the only thing more persistent than stains. Here are the stories. Meet your customers, merchants, soldiers, tired travelers, and a suspicious number of clergy who insist they're only here to save souls. Every visitor brings their own unique odor, bargaining skills, and medieval misunderstanding of personal boundaries. Let's take a slow, slightly horrified stroll through tonight's lineup because the clientele of a medieval brothel are nothing if not memorable. First up are the merchants. They're the ones who swagger in with jangling purses and slightly cleaner fingernails. They always claim to be just passing through on extremely important business, but somehow they know every local drink special by heart. Their bargaining technique, haggling for 20 minutes over the price of a room, and then tipping with a foreign coin no one can actually spend. Merchants love to talk about themselves, about their wares, and about the one time they almost did business with a duke, except the duke tragically died of natural causes. Translation: plague or bad soup. Next, you have the soldiers. Gruff, loud, and so caked in mud you could plant turnips on their boots. Soldiers travel in packs and think they're charming. Most have spent weeks on the road, so the phrase smelling like victory takes on a more literal, nose-watering meaning. Their table manners are creative, and their idea of romance is arguing over who gets the least lumpy corner of the straw mattress. Still, if you want news about battles or the latest town burned to the ground, these are your go-to sources. Just don't expect them to remember your name or they're owned by morning. Travelers round out the regulars. These are the hollow-eyed folk, shuffling in at all hours, carrying nothing but a walking stick, a sack full of regrets, and a blanket with the texture of a dried fish. They're just grateful for a roof, a hot bowl of pottage, and a night without being rained on by the weather or by the contents of someone's chamber pot. Travelers don't complain much. Honestly, they're too tired to notice if the stew has extra protein or if the mattress bites back. They'll sleep through anything, including medieval karaoke night. And then there are the clergy. So many clergy. Officially, they're here to check on the spiritual health of the house, but everyone knows what's really going on. You'll hear a lot about sin, repentance, and the importance of generosity. Usually, right before someone accidentally leaves a coin purse under a pillow. Some clergy are regulars, dropping pearls of wisdom, and sometimes actual pearls if they're particularly well connected, before vanishing at sunrise with a vow of silence and an interesting rash. Others claim they're just here for the soup. No one believes them, but the parade of regret doesn't end there. Occasionally, you get a nobleman slumming it in disguise, convinced no one will recognize him beneath his very common hat, which is actually a velvet cap with a feather so large it blocks the candlelight. He'll try to pay in promises, poetry, or invitations to a feast that almost certainly doesn't exist. If caught, he'll swear he's just an innocent shepherd looking for lost sheep. Everyone rolls their eyes and lets him keep the act, if only for entertainment value. You'll also meet the chronically broke locals. These are the same faces every week, each with a new story about why they can't pay tonight, but will definitely make it up next time. One lost his purse to Abbot Pocket. One is mourning a beloved pig. One claims the moon is in retrograde, and it's bad luck to pay for anything on a Tuesday. The madam keeps a special list for these cases, and they usually end up doing chores or cleaning up after the goat until their debts are settled, which is medieval for never. Now, let's not forget the occasional tourists, lost students, runaway apprentices, or traveling minstrels. These folks have big dreams, empty purses, and are usually fleeing something: a failed love affair, a bad grade in Latin, or just the local constable. They bring stories from far away, a little music, and unfortunately, a fresh batch of lice. Each customer brings something to the brothel. A new rumor, a new stain, a new chapter in the ongoing saga of what happened last night. Personal boundaries? Not really a thing. A handshake might turn into a hug, or someone might just wander into the wrong bed and declare it fate. By morning, the parade of regret heads back out into the world, carrying away their secrets, their questionable change, and a faint scent of tallow candles. If you're lucky, all you catch is a new story to tell. If not, well, that's why the house keeps extra vinegar in stock. If you're hoping for a steamy soak and a scented candle, lower your expectations. The communal bath is a leaky barrel in the yard, and the soap smells like sheep. Most guests just try to drown their problems in ale and hope the lice don't notice. Let's break your modern heart right now. Personal hygiene in a medieval brothel is not just low on the list. It's the list basement. The concept of a relaxing bubble bath after a long night's work is as realistic as a dragon sighting. Instead, the nightly cleaning ritual is more survival challenge than spa day. If you want to freshen up, you're invited to use the infamous bath barrel, which is technically an ex-wine cask that now serves as both a bath and a science experiment. The water in this barrel is at best lukewarm if you're first in line, but after the first customer comes out, the temperature drops and the water gains an extra burniness. By the third bather, it's less of a bath and more of a swap meet for skin cells and secrets. On busy nights, the barrel is a revolving door of feet, elbows, and hair that may or may not belong to current employees. No, there's no changing the water between baths. That would require both effort and a reliable water source, luxuries the house can't afford. Soap is a closely guarded commodity, and it's really just a grayish lump with the aroma of wet sheep meets overcooked onions. It's doled out in slivers, and everyone's learned to guard theirs as fiercely as gold. Try to sneak a double scrub, and you'll draw the madame's wrath faster than someone singing after midnight. For most, a quick rinse of the hands and face is all the effort they'll spare. Full body washing is reserved for high holidays, epidemics, and visits from very important customers. At which point, a heroic quantity of perfume will be splashed around to make up the difference. The rest of the time, you do what medieval people do best. Embrace the smell and hope for the best. After all, in a world where everyone's ripe, nobody's. Nose is clean. The perfumed doer is a blend of sweat, tallow, ale, and whatever herb was thrown on the fire last week. Lavender if you're lucky, cabbage if you're not. Guests are, if anything, even worse. Travelers arrive carrying the scent of every horse they've ever met. Soldiers think that dunking their feet in a trough counts as a bath. Merchants try to mask everything with strong cologne, which only makes things more complicated. The worst offenders are those who claim to be naturally clean. The medieval equivalent of someone bragging about being able to eat anything without getting sick. Lice, fleas, and their extended families are so common that they're practically members of the staff. Combs exist, but only in the sense that someone once found a toothless relic and claimed it was decorative. Flea picking is a communal activity, usually done while gossiping about who skipped out on their bill. Workers have favorite spots to sit where the breeze blows strongest, not to cool off, but in hopes that maybe the wind will carry away a few persistent stowaways. For those feeling especially fancy, there's always the option to visit the local bathhouse. But baths come with their own hazards, gossip, scandal, and a strong possibility of running into half the town, including that one priest who always asks too many questions. Besides, baths are expensive, sometimes banned, and always suspect. No one wants to explain to the bishop why they were just there for the steam. To cover the gaps in cleanliness, the house employs a system of strategic laundering. Bedding is changed. Occasionally, shirts and undergarments are rinsed when they begin to smell stronger than the communal cheese. But mostly everything is disguised with fresh rushes on the floor and a prayer to Saint Anthony, patron saint of lost causes and lost. Soap. So as you settle in for the night, surrounded by the fragrant tapestry of medieval life, remember in this brothel, hygiene isn't a goal, it's a rumor. And tomorrow, you'll be grateful for every drop of that sheepy soap, every gust of fresh air, and every excuse to blame the dog for the way things smell. Because in the end, history stinks, and the brothel does too. Privacy is a fantasy. You're sharing a room with 3 snoring workers, 2 chickens, and a goat who claims diplomatic immunity. Every creak of the floorboards is a reminder that you're never ever alone. Let's talk about what that room really means in a medieval brothel. If you're expecting a private suite, soft sheets, or dare you dream, an actual mattress, adjust those expectations right now. The shared bedroom is a triumph of creative crowd control, featuring a rickety wooden floor, a ceiling so low you can comb your hair with it, and walls made of patched fabric curtains that do a heroic but ultimately pointless job of pretending to divide the space. The only thing separating you from the next person is the thin hope that everyone else is too tired to care. Your sleeping arrangements are less bed and more crunchy communal nest. A rough pallet stuffed with straw sits atop the cold floor, creaking every time someone dares to breathe. If you're lucky, you score a spot somewhere in the middle, away from the drafty cracks in the wall, and only slightly within pecking distance of the chickens. These birds aren't just pets. They're both early morning alarms and late night emotional. Support animals. As long as your idea of support is a sharp beak in the foot at 3 a.m., and then there's the goat. Nobody knows how the goat got here. Nobody knows how the goat remains here, but he's carved out his corner near the fireplace and glares at anyone who gets too close. The madam claims he keeps the evil spirits away. Others claim he's the reincarnation of a disgruntled landlord. Either way, the goat is the only one allowed to hog the blanket, and if you don't love it, you do so at your own risk. The soundtrack of your night includes the following: snores at 3 different pitches, someone muttering their dreams in Old French, the soft rustle of straw as a mouse relocates, and the abrupt squawk of a chicken settling a personal vendetta. There's always a midnight negotiation about who gets the good pillow, the one with the least amount of mysterious stains. Usually it ends in compromise, or more likely, nobody wins and everyone settles for a lumpy bundle of laundry. Personal. Space, it's an ancient legend. On the coldest nights, everyone huddles together for warmth, forming a sort of human lasagna layered with linen, wool, and desperation. You might find yourself spooning with a coworker you barely know, one arm flung over the chicken for good. Measure, nobody makes eye contact in the morning. If you think insomnia is a modern problem, try sleeping in a room where someone always needs to get up. Whether it's for the chamber pot located conveniently behind a curtain that only blocks sounds, if you believe hard enough to feed the animals, or to chase off the aforementioned mouse. And don't forget the parade of customers who occasionally blunder into the wrong room, convinced they're looking for Marjorie when really they're just one curtain short of disaster. Then there's the temperature. In winter, it's so cold you can see your breath and your straw pillow gets frosty. In summer, it's a steam bath of bodies and barnyard aroma. Ventilation is a polite fiction. A single tiny window lets in just enough fresh air to keep hope alive, but not enough to make a difference. If you do manage to drift off, the goat usually wakes you up at dawn by standing on your feet, reminding you who's really in charge. And yet, in all this chaos, there's a weird sort of comfort. The shared bedroom is where stories are whispered, secrets exchanged, and the occasional forbidden laugh bubbles up despite everyone's best efforts to sleep. You realize as you pull your blanket tighter and try Toinger, the chicken using your shoulder as a perch that you're living a slice of. History, the exhausting, noisy communal side that never makes it into fairy tales. So as you lay awake, serenaded by snores, livestock, and the distant arguments of your neighbors, remember privacy is overrated and sleep is optional. In the medieval brothel, you never truly rest alone because the night, like the rent, is always shared. Forget the 9 to 5. In a medieval brothel, the real action starts after dark. Oil lamps flicker, coins clink, and the air fills with a chorus of fake laughter and actual coughing. You wonder if anyone here has ever had 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The sun has barely dipped below the crooked rooftops, and already the brothel is transforming. What was earlier a haven for exhausted workers and the world's laziest goat is now a bustling epicenter of medieval nightlife, if you can call it life. The atmosphere thickens with a fog of candle smoke, spilled ale, and at least 3 competing perfumes, all fighting to cover up the faint but persistent odor of turnips and regret. It all starts in the common room. The roof-and tables are quickly repopulated with merchants eager to part with their coin, soldiers looking for distraction or a fight, whichever comes first, and clergy whispering prayers and apologies in equal measure. The staff are already in motion, weaving between bodies with the kind of skill that only comes from years of dodging unwanted advances and flying tinkers. The night shift is here, and business is officially open. The oil lamp sputtering reluctant things cast everyone in a flattering golden glow if you're standing at the right angle. More likely, you just look like you've wandered into a dramatic play about the dangers of questionable lighting. Shadows gather in every corner, perfect for whispered gossip and clandestine transactions, or for customers trying desperately to remember which Marjorie they spoke to earlier. The soundtrack is pure medieval, the The snap of firewood, the jingle of coins being counted twice just to be sure, and the intermittent hacking of a cough that may or may not be contagious. Laughter rises and falls in carefully modulated waves, everyone determined to sound more relaxed and successful than they actually feel. The barmaid spins wild stories to the soldiers, each one bigger and more unlikely than the last, because reality has never been a popular beverage here. For the workers, the night shift is a test of endurance. There are customers to charm, drinks to pour, songs to sing, and occasional brawls to break up before the madam has to intervene with her. Legendary ladle. Every interaction is a performance. Smiles are practiced, jokes are rehearsed, and every movement is calculated for maximum coin collection and minimum personal injury. If you think customer service today is tough, imagine doing it while wearing a dress made of recycled bed sheets in a room where the fire keeps going out and half the guests can't remember your real name. Some customers are sweet, some are tragic, and some are just here to sleep it off in the corner, leaving a trail of muddy footprints and sake bread behind. On any given night, you might overhear a marriage proposal, a dramatic confession, or someone swearing eternal love to a barmaid who's already forgotten what he looks like. Secrets are currency, and everyone is always trading a little bit of theirs for a little bit of someone else's. Sometimes in the lull between songs and arguments, you wonder if anyone ever truly sleeps here. The short answer, absolutely not. Breaks are rare and treasured. If you manage to sneak away, it's only to the cold storm to catch your breath, splash your face with water, or if you're truly desperate, sit on a crate of onions and pretend you're somewhere else. The night feels endless. Even in the last, customer staggers out and the lamps are snuffed. Sleep is still a distant hope. There's bedding to wash, coins to count, and the never-ending hunt for that one missing chicken. By the time dawn teases the windows with a pale gray glow, you're left wondering if you work through the night or just lived it on repeat. The rooster crows, the goat yawns, and you realize the only thing more persistent than the customers is the feeling that you've never, not once, slept all the way through the night. In a medieval brothel, the night shift is less a job and more an act of survival. Business as usual, dinner is served. It's pottage again. A thick stew containing vegetables, grains, and something that might have been a pigeon. If you're lucky, there's stale bread. If you're really lucky, it isn't moving. Let's break the fantasy right here. Eating in a medieval brothel isn't candlelit romance or decadent banquets. It's more like a game show where the only prize is not getting food. Poisoning. Pottage is the house specialty. And by specialty, I mean it's the only thing anyone knows how to cook. Every night, the same battered cauldron sits on the fire, bubbling away with a desperate hope that someone brought a fresh turnip or at least a handful of barley. It's less a stew and more a living record of everything that's passed through the kitchen this month. The secret ingredient is always whatever's left. Carrots that look like they're reconsidering their life choices, onions from the bottom of the sack, and a generous scoop of last week's mystery meat labeled pigeon for plausible deniability. Sometimes the meat is rabbit, sometimes it's rat, and once in a blue moon, a very unlucky chicken. You didn't ask too many questions. That's how rumors start, and rumors get you assigned to dishwashing duty. Let's talk texture. Pottage isn't smooth. It's hearty, lumpy, and sometimes chewy in ways that vegetables really shouldn't be. The broth changes color depending on what's been boiled in it lately, ranging from murky brown to suspiciously green. Some nights you hit the jackpot and find a whole bean. Other nights, you wonder if that crunch was a bone or just an overly ambitious grain of barley. Then there's the bread. Medieval bread. The only thing harder than the workers' lives. The loaf is dense, gray, and so stale it could be used as a defensive weapon in the event of a tavern brawl. If you drop it, it either shatters or it leaves a dent in the table. Slicing it requires both technique and upper body strength. On rare occasions, someone brings in a soft bit from the baker's wife, an event so momentous it's commemorated with a round of applause and a moment of silence. If you want butter or cheese, you're in the wrong tax bracket. Here, dairy is reserved for special occasions, visiting nobles or bribes for the city inspector. Sometimes there's a spread, a suspicious smear of something that claims to be lard. You try not to think about it too hard because overthinking is dangerous in a medieval kitchen. The kitchen itself is a miracle of medieval engineering. A smoky fireplace, one pot never properly scrubbed, and an assortment of wooden spoons and knives. So blunt they might be safer than actual cutlery. Dishes are washed with boiling water, sand, and prayer. The cook, usually someone who failed at every other job, wields a ladle like a weapon and threatens anyone who complains about portion size. For drinks, you're served weak ale or watered-down wine. Water isn't trusted, and for good reason. It's safer to risk a mild hangover than whatever lives in the town well. On special nights, someone sneaks in a jug of something stronger. But be warned, the last person who drank from it claimed to see saints and then lost the ability to walk straight. For a week, dessert, you ask. There is no dessert. At best, you might find a shriveled apple or a wrinkled fig hiding in someone's apron. The idea of after-dinner treats is just another myth, right up there with regular bathing and comfortable shoes. Meals are communal, loud, and full of side commentary. The table talk ranges from the day's gossip to the latest debate about what exactly was floating in the pottage. No one eats alone, and everyone is eager to trade their bread crust for your slightly less moldy turnip. So, as you finish a meal feeling oddly grateful to have made it through dinner without cracking a tooth, remember in the medieval brothel, cuisine is less about flavor and more about survival. And if you're still hungry, there's always more pottage. There's always more pottage. To keep the peace, the brothel employs security. Usually a large, irritable mastiff who's paid in leftover bones and therite to sleep wherever he pleases. He's surprisingly effective, if not particularly discerning. Let's be clear. In a medieval brothel, the idea of a bouncer conjures images of a burly soldier with arms the size of hams and a glower that could sour milk. But here, reality is both simpler and somehow more effective. The bouncer is a dog. Not just any dog, but an ancient mastiff named with classic medieval creativity, Brutus. Brutus is as wide as a wheelbarrow, mostly muscle and fur with the kind of jowls that make small children reconsider their career choices. He is the undisputed king of the threshold. If you're a stranger, you meet Brutus before you meet anyone else. His job description is straightforward: nap in doorways, inspect, pockets for snacks, and emit a low growl at anyone who tries to sneak out without paying. No formal training, just centuries of canine instinct and a deep personal commitment to dinner. The moment the door swings open and a rowdy customer stumbles in, Brutus performs a quick sniff assessment. This is medieval security clearance. Do you smell like trouble, sausage, or both? The madam swears that Brutus can detect a liar just by the twitch of their toes. Rumor has it he once stopped a notorious thief with nothing more than a well-timed yawn. Most guests don't dare test him. Even the town's drunkest soldier will think twice before arguing with 120 pounds of dog with a bite force strong enough to crack. A soup don't. But if you're a regular, especially if you have a treat in your pocket, Brutus will allow you to pass with nothing more than a resigned sniff. Inside, Brutus patrols at his leisure, weaving between tables and sleeping wherever he's least wanted. If a fight breaks out, he doesn't bother barking. He simply wads into the fray, plants himself between the combatants, and gives them a look of such weary disappointment that the squabble usually fizzles on the spot. For particularly persistent troublemakers, he'll escort them outside with a gentle force of his considerable backside. The house rolls saply to everyone, but Brutus enforces his own. No food left unattended. He'll confiscate it for investigation. No loud noises after dark, unless you want to pour the size of a frying pan resting pointedly on your foot. And under no circumstances should anyone ever disturb his nap. One unfortunate merchant learned this the hard way, and his shoe is still missing. Other security measures are more symbolic than effective. There's a wooden club behind the bar, used mostly for stirring soup. A rusty old sword hangs over the doorway, half as threatening as Brutus' morning breath. For emergencies, the madame keeps a whistle, though most agree it's just to call the dog in for backup. The real genius of canine security, though, is psychological. Word travels fast in a medieval town. Everyone knows the brothel is guarded by a beast who fears nothing except running out of bones. Petty thieves, jealous husbands, and even the occasional angry bishop will hesitate before starting trouble in a place where the bouncer drools on command. Of course, Brutus isn't perfect. He sometimes confuses paying customers with delivery boys, and once spent an entire afternoon guarding a ham instead of the door. His no-tolerance policy for cats is legendary. Still, he gets the job done and asks for little more than leftovers and a warm spot by the fire. So, if you're planning to visit, remember, don't try anything clever. Don't leave your stew unattended. And always, always greet the dog first. Because in this brothel, security may not be high-tech, but it's loyal, large, and always hungry. And honestly, Brutus is worth more than 3 guards, 2 locks, and 1 very nervous rooster. Sleep well if you can. The dog's watching the door tonight. Brothel operate under a shifting web of official tolerance, church outrage, and periodic crackdowns. When the bafe knocks, everyone suddenly forgets their own name and tries to hide behind a curtain. Spoiler, there are no curtains. Life in a medieval brothel isn't just about keeping customers happy and the soup unpoisoned. It's also about playing a non-stop game of hide-and-seek with the law. On any given week, you're not sure if the brothel is legally tolerated but frowned upon, an official necessary evil, or the root of all sin soon to be cleansed by fire and angry sermons. This means the house always runs on nerves, rumor, and at least 3 backup plans. The first and most important tool for legal survival, bribes. Lots of bribes. The madam keeps a stash of coins in a pot stashed inside a larger teapot, stashed under a loose floorboard beneath the good rug. When the bafe or town constable arrives for an inspection, the proper protocol is simple. Offer a seat, pour a drink, and quietly slide a pouch of coins across the table. The conversation is always coded. Is the house in order tonight? Translation. Is the bribe ready? We've done a thorough sweeping. Translation. Take the money. Please leave. But bribery alone doesn't guarantee peace. The church has its own set of rules and its own agents. Usually a priest with a face like a thundercloud who drops by to remind everyone of the fires of hell, right before pocketing a little donation for the local orphanage, which happens to be staffed by his cousins. These visits require a performance. Workers cover up, customers look penitent, and someone starts a loud prayer just in case a passing neighbor is listening at the window. Guilt is the evening's dress code, and the air gets so thick with piety. You could cut it with a communion wafer. Of course, sometimes the authorities decide to stage a raid. Maybe the local bishop needs a political distraction, or the mayor's wife is feeling particularly virtuous. Word spreads quickly. A nervous neighbor or a paid lookout dashes through the door, breathless with warnings. The response is pure chaos, all spilled. Customers shoved out the back door, and staff suddenly engaged in extremely innocent activities, like scrubbing floors, darning socks, or reciting poetry to the goats. Everyone forgets their real names, and when in doubt, blames everything on Marjorie. There's always a Marjorie. Hiding evidence is an art form. Money is whisked away. The better. Wine disappears. And that suspicious pile of coins becomes a collection for the poor. The madam produces a ledger full of fictional entries. 2 dozen eggs, 1 bushel of apples, 3 barrels of disappointment. If the bailiff insists on inspecting the premises, he's met with Brutus, the dog, who has strong opinions about strangers with clipboards. If bluffing fails and someone gets hauled off for questioning, don't expect loyalty. Everyone has a story prepared, none of them matching. The key is to talk in circles until the officials are so confused they decide paperwork isn't worth the trouble. The record for the longest interrogation stands at 2 hours and ended with the bailiff buying drinks for the staff. None the wiser about anything. Still, the law can be capricious. Some nights the brothel is simply ignored, considered too useful for visiting dignitaries or wealthy merchants who get lost on their way home from church. Other nights, it's the first target for a wave of moral outrage. There's never any warning, just a sudden tightening of the rules, a surge in fines, or a lot of loud sermons about sin that mysteriously coincide with tax collection. To survive, the brothel operates with 1 foot in the shadows and 1 eye on the door. Everyone learns how to keep secrets, invent new names, and stash a quick exit plan just in case. There's always a friend of a friend on the town council, a cousin who's married to the night watchman, or a regular customer who just happens to be the magistrate's nephew. Social connections are the medieval insurance policy. Fragile, unreliable, and absolutely necessary. So when the law comes knocking, don't panic. Put on your best innocent face. Remember your alias and pray the madam has the right bribe ready. Because in the medieval brothel, the line between legal and illegal is thin, flexible, and usually negotiable. And if all else fails, just blame Marjorie. It's not just the threat of angry husbands or rowdy drunks. Brothel life is a bingo card of medieval illnesses. There are no condoms, no antibiotics, and the best advice for a cough is drink more ale and try not to die. Let's start by admitting the obvious. Medieval brothel healthcare makes modern WebMD look like a luxury spa. The house medic is usually the oldest worker with the steadiest hands, a collection of homemade salves, and a deep, unshakable belief in the power of boiled onion. There's no such thing as a sterile environment, unless you count the time the madam tried to fumigate the place with burning sage, setting off a coughing fit so spectacular, it's now commemorated every year with a free round of ale. The first thing you notice after one night is the constant, unignorable presence of lice and fleas. They're not just hazards, they're house regulars. You're expected to pick them off like raisins from a loaf of bread, and there's so many folk remedies. Being passed around that the kitchen sometimes smells like a tossed salad. One day it's vinegar and garlic, the next it's a dash of salt behind the ears. And for the really desperate, just keep scratching and hope for the best. Respiratory issues are as common as gossip. With every customer comes a fresh cloud of germs, and every cough is received with a moment of silent dread. If someone starts sneezing, the communal response is to pass the ale and light some more candles, as if the flicker of tallow can scare off infection. There are no tissues, so sleeves are the medieval handkerchief, an arrangement that does wonders for the spread of colds and the general aroma of the house. Then there are the specialist hazards, the sort you can only get in a building with this many visitors and this little ventilation. Syphilis, the pox, and an impressive catalog of rashes are all considered an occupational hazard. Treatments range from herbal tea and denial to rub this suspicious ointment on it and hope it doesn't burn. The local apothecary does brisk business, selling potions with names like St. Agnes Purifying Tonic or Maid's Comfort, none of which actually work, but all of which taste like regret and turnip. Injuries are another nightly occurrence. A well-placed elbow, a jealous partner climbing in the window, or a customer who's confused gentle affection with medieval wrestling. Bruises are the brothel's unofficial badge of honor, and a twist of ankle is just part of the job description. For anything broken, the options are grim. Ask the blacksmith's wife for a splint. She uses leftover shoe leather, or just grit your teeth and hope the swelling goes down before the next shift. The kitchen, meanwhile, is a minefield of its own. Food poisoning is so routine it's known by nicknames. The pottage purges or the stale bread shuffle. No. Refrigeration, so you eat what's served, chew slowly, and hope your stomach is as tough as your willpower. If not, you're banished to the yard with nothing but a bucket and the rooster for company. Water not to be trusted. The well out back is questionable, and the river is strictly for emergencies, like the house is on fire emergencies. Most people drink weak ale or wine to avoid the very real danger of dysentery. Even so, stomach cramps are an inevitable part of daily life. The polite thing is not to mention it. Just clutch your side and nod knowingly at the other sufferers. Let's not forget mental toll, sleep deprivation, anxiety, and the constant threat of arrest or eviction combine to make stress its own form of medieval plague. There's no therapy, just gossip, prayer, and an extra serving of whatever passes for dessert on bad days. In the end, health in a medieval brothel is a combination of luck, resilience, and pretending you don't notice that weird rash spreading up your arm. You hope for the best. You drink to forget, and if all else fails, you blame the goats, because honestly, in a place where the biggest cure for any ailment is a wait and see, every sunrise feels like a minor miracle. Wages are paid nightly, and so are the debts. The madam takes her cut, the bouncer gets his bone, and what's left barely covers a new pair of socks. The house always wins, especially when you owe rent. Let's dive into the gritty reality of brothel economics, where every copper coin is measured, counted, and mysteriously lighter than you remember. Each night's takings are tallied with the grim precision of someone who knows exactly how far a single farthing can stretch. Spoiler, it's not very far. Workers line up after the night shift, blurry-eyed and hoping for good news, only to watch the madam's fingers slide steadily down the ledger, like a judge reading off charges. First, there's the house cut, an ancient tradition and possibly the earliest form of corporate overhead. The madam's percentage varies by mood, weather, and the current state of the roof. That leak in the corner, that'll be another 2%. There are deductions for broken crockery, lost linen, and once memorably for emotional damages suffered by the goat. Everyone grumbles, but the rules are the rules, and the madam is the only one with the key to the strong box. Next up, Brutus, the bouncer. He gets his pay in the form of leftover stew bones and the first choice of sleeping spot. But don't think for a second that's the end of expenses. Somebody's always buying a treat to stay on his good side, or bribing him with a hunk of cheese to look the other way when sneaking an extra cup of ale. It's protection money, but fluffier. Now let's address rent. If you think modern landlords are tough, try negotiating with a madam who's heard every excuse in existence and invented most of them herself. Your bed in the shared room, no matter how lumpy, costs a chunk of your earnings every week, can't pay. You're assigned extra chores, or worse, forced to wear the communal tunic until someone else forgets to pay. What's left after deductions? Nat. Much, maybe enough for a small luxury. Some threadbare socks from the market, a tart apple, or if you're feeling flush, a sliver of questionable soap. Most workers stash their savings in the least obvious place, inside an old boot sewn into the hem of a tunic, or buried in the chicken coop. The goat to this day is suspected of running a shadow economy. If you're hoping for a raise, good luck. Negotiating higher wages in the medieval brothel is like asking for a window seat on a ship without windows. The answer is always the same. Work harder or hope for rain. Some try to supplement their income by offering extras, fortune-telling, singing, or laundry services. But the madam takes a cut of those too, citing management fees. There's always someone in debt, usually several someones. A lost purse, a bad run at dice, or a fine imposed for breaking house rules can spiral into a cycle of use and whispered promises. The madame keeps careful track, her memory as sharp as her spoon. Debts can be paid off through extra shifts, errands run in the rain, or a night spent on chicken duty. Interest is never spoken of, but always implied. Meanwhile, the brothel's expenses never sleep. There are bribes for the bafe, donations to the church, for forgiveness and plumbing repairs, and the ongoing cost of firewood, candles, and an endless supply of cheap ale. Somehow, even when the place is packed and coins change hands with every wink and smile, the books always balance just in the house's favor. The madame says it's simple accounting. The workers call it magic, or maybe just experience. In this world, money flows like ale quickly and always with a little spillage. If you're wise, you'll hide a coin or two for a rainy day, though odds are the madam will find it before you do. In the end, it's not about getting rich. It's about surviving to payday, laughing at your empty purse, and knowing that while the house always wins, at least you're still in the game. So next time you hear someone say, follow the money, remember in the medieval brothel, all roads lead right back to the madame strongbox. The house always wins, and the goat, of course, gets his cut. When business is slow, entertainment ranges from rocker singing to extremely low-budget puppet shows. On a good night, someone finds a loot. On a bad night, someone tries to juggle knives. Nobody wins. Let's set the mood. Picture it. The candles are burning low. Customers are counting their last few coins, and even Brutus the dog has fallen asleep by the fire, snoring louder than anyone thought possible. There's a lull in the action, a dangerous thing in a place built on distraction. That's when the show begins. In a world before streaming, the brothel's main form of entertainment is whatever can be cobbled together from the available talent, objects, and occasionally farm animals. First, the singing. It's never planned. Someone just stands up, usually after their third cup of ale, and belts out a tune about lost love. A cheating merchant or the world's most famous goat. The audience joins in, whether they know the words or not, and harmonies are achieved entirely by accident. The brothel's best singer is usually one of the cooks, who claims she once performed for a baron, though evidence is thin in memories. Thinner. She's known for a voice that can cut through the thickest soup fog and a habit of changing lyrics on the fly to poke fun at the clientele. If music isn't enough, it's time for the puppet show. The props are always handmade, socks with button eyes, straw dolls, and the occasional turnip with a painted face. The stories are loosely based on actual events, usually the latest town scandal retold with extra slapstick and questionable accuracy. If you're the target of tonight's play, expect to be mercilessly roasted and then handed a wooden spoon as a consolation prize. The crowd loves it, especially after enough ale. And nobody takes offense, at least not until tomorrow morning. Then there's the infamous juggling. In theory, it's meant to wow the crowd. In practice, it's an exercise in dodging flying objects. Most of the time, the juggler is just a bored farmhand who's had too much to drink and decided to show off by tossing candlesticks, bread rolls, or if things get desperate, a mildly annoyed chicken. The results range from accidental slapstick to genuine chaos. The dog has learned to hide under the table whenever someone yells catch. Games are another staple. There's dice, of course, always loaded, always contested. Card games that have no written rules and at least 3 possible winners per round. Occasionally, someone organizes a guessing game. What's that smell? Is a house favorite, though nobody has ever truly won. If a guest claims to be from out of town, they're drafted into telling stories, real or imagined, about lands where people bathe twice a week and bread comes pre-sliced. On rare occasions, someone unearths a lute or a battered drum, and the entire house is treated to a real concert. The music is enthusiastic, if not always in tune, and everyone claps along, except Brutus, who howls until he's let outside. Dancing breaks out, often more comic than graceful, with partners swapped and steps invented on the spot. It's communal, chaotic, and surprisingly joyful. Nobody cares about skill. What matters is making noise and forgetting your worries for a few precious minutes. Not all entertainment is so wholesome. Sometimes it's just gossip hour. Story swapped, secrets spilled, and the latest scandal dissected with more detail than the local apothecary puts into his potions. A new rumor can travel from the kitchen to the front door in under 5 minutes. By the end of the night, everyone's heard 3 different versions, all more dramatic than the last. When things really slow down, entertainment takes a philosophical turn. Someone might debate whether turnips are better than carrots, or if the bishop's nephew is truly as pious as he claims. These debates end when Simeon brings out the last of the ale, or the goat interrupts with his own opinion, usually expressed by eating the evidence. So while the world outside dreams of feasts and tournaments, the medieval brothel keeps spirits up with its own brand of chaos and creativity. Laughter is the house's real currency, and everyone leaves with a story, if not a bruise from a straight bread roll. Welcome to medieval Netflix. Low budget, high drama, and always on. Forget the town crier. The brothel grapevine is the fastest in town. Scandalous secrets, royal affairs, and the latest bout of food poisoning all make the rounds before dawn. Welcome to Gossip Central, where information flows faster than ale, and the walls have ears. Plus noses and occasionally a tail if Brutus the bouncer is snoozing nearby. In the medieval brothel, nothing is private for long. The kitchen staff know everything before breakfast. The madam knows it before you've even decided to tell her. And by sunset, even the goat is caught up on the late scandal. If you thought your hometown was bad for rumors, you've never met Marjorie, who's got both the sharpest tongue and the best memory east of the city gate. Every shift, someone is whispering in a corner, pretending to polish cutlery while actually sharing the juiciest tidbit they overheard behind the curtain. News travels to Blado Table. A merchant's bankruptcy, a knight's embarrassing rash, the mayor's latest secret visit, which is only secret because he insists on wearing a disguise that fools absolutely no one. By midnight, the story has changed 3 times and gained several fictional details, usually to make it even funnier or more damning. If someone sneezes twice at dinner, it's a full-blown plague by morning, and the whole neighborhood is dosing themselves with garlic in self-defense. There are no boundaries to the brothel grapevine. No one is too important to escape its reach. Not the priest who claims he's there to save souls. Not the babe who accidentally drips by during the dinner rush, and certainly not the madam herself. In fact, half the fun is seeing who can spin the best version of a day's doings without getting caught. Even customers get in on the act. Travelers trade stories for soup. And if you want an extra ladle, you'd better have a rumor to offer. Foreign merchants always attract attention. Are they really just here for the market fair? Or is that satchel full of gold coins or something even more suspicious like genuine pepper? The morning after is an unofficial news conference. Everyone gathers around the hearth clutching crusts of bread, eager for updates. Someone always has a friend who knows a guy who swears he saw the town reef running from a chicken or the bishop dancing in the square after curfew. The stories are told and retold, getting taller each time. The truth is flexible in the brothel, and nobody actually wants to ruin a good tale with boring facts. Occasionally, gossip takes on a life of its own, snowballing into something the whole town can't ignore. A single overheard argument turns into a brewing feud between rival merchants. A harmless flirtation is reimagined as a forbidden romance, and someone's unfortunate food poisoning becomes a dire warning against the cook's stew. Though everyone still eats it, hunger trumps caution every time. The brothel's real information network, though, is the staff themselves. Each has a niche. The kitchen maid hears everything from the garden. The night shift catches secrets whispered in theatric. And the laundry worker is practically a spy, sorting through the evidence of who wore what and where. The madam is the final judge, filtering rumors for leverage or amusement, deploying them when needed to settle disputes, discourage bad behavior, or simply keep herself entertained. Woe betide anyone who tries to keep a secret in this place. The brothel is a living, breathing rumor mill, and the only safe secrets are the ones you never say out loud. Even the animals get involved. A missing egg is proof of a grand theft. A wandering rooster sparks accusations of sabotage. And Brutus's favorite napping spot is a treasure trove of overheard half-truths. In a world without newspapers, social media, or even reliable mail, gossip is the real heartbeat of the brothel and the whole town. It's how alliances are made, enemies are warned, and reputations are crafted or ruined overnight. So if you've got something to hide, keep your head down, your mouth shut, and your story straight. Because here, news travels at the speed of shame, and everyone's listening for the next headline. Every worker here juggles personal faith with a job the local priest condemns every Sunday. Some pray before bed, some after, and some just hope they won't be recognized at church. Let's set the stage. In medieval Europe, faith isn't just for Sundays. It's the background music to daily life, the air you breathe, and sometimes the only thing standing between you and an eternity of imaginative punishment in the afterlife. For brothel workers, this means living every day on the theological edge, trying to keep one foot in heaven while the other dances suspiciously close to the flames. The local priest is both a regular visitor, just checking on your soul's mind, you, and the loudest critic from the pulpit. Every Sunday sermon ends with a thundering condemnation of sin, temptation, and the den of iniquity on the edge of town. There's always a subtle glance toward Marjorie, who stares straight ahead, clutching her prayer book and trying not to look like someone who spent last night hiding a nobleman in the linen cupboard. Prayer is a daily balancing act. Some workers kneel before bed, reciting the same prayers their mothers taught them, asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do, what I did, and whatever I'll forget to mention. Others light a candle at the shrine in the corner of the room, hoping the Virgin. Mary is too busy elsewhere to check the guest list. Still others just mutter a quick sorry under their breath and promise to do better after payday. Church attendance is expected. After all, appearances must be kept. The church is the center of social life, the only place where even the brothels. Most infamous faces can blend in for an hour. Some wear their finest and only dress, heads covered and eyes downcast, hoping the priest doesn't recognize their shoes from the previous night. A few risk singing in the choir, figuring that nothing says repentant like a well-hit high note. Yet religious guilt is more than public shaming and anxious prayers. It's woven into every interaction, every glance from a passing nun, every whispered rumor about the curse of a sinful life. The staff swap horror stories about pious relatives and dreams of hellish punishment. The madam, pragmatic as always, insists that God helps those who help themselves and that includes tipping the cook. Confession is a strategic exercise. No one wants to be too specific. Sins are described in vague terms. I was less than virtuous, or I spent time with questionable company. The priest listens, sighs, and gives out penance. Sometimes so many prayers that workers suspect he's just trying to boost the church's attendance numbers. After all, every Hail Mary is a minute spent not worrying about the house stew. But faith is not just a burden, it's also a comfort. In a world where tomorrow is never guaranteed, and a bad winter can mean starvation, hope is currency. Workers pray for health, safety, and that the town guard will get lost on the way home. Every lucky streak, no injuries, no raids, an extra coin from a grateful guest, is seen as a little miracle, proof that someone up there is still listening, even if only out of curiosity. And of course, some clergy are more understanding than others. The occasional visiting friar will pause on his way out, slip a loaf of bread to the kitchen and whisper, "We're all sinners, but at least you make the world interesting." It's the sort of blessing you don't write home about, but it softens the edge of guilt all the same. So, as you lie in bed, staring at the flickering candle and debating whether to add another prayer for good measure, you realize that faith and survival have always gone hand in hand. Here in the brothel, the only real sin is forgetting to hope. Because even in a world of whispered shame and second chances, everyone's looking for redemption or at least a little mercy before the rooster crows. Sometimes the brothel receives visitors less interested in pleasure and more in eavesdropping, blackmail, or recruiting for questionable crusades. These are the nights when everyone pretends to be asleep. If you think a brothel's only worry is rowdy customers and the occasional runaway goat, think again. The real tension starts when a certain kind of guest slips through the door. Sharply dressed, eyes darting, hands suspiciously clean. You know instantly that these are not the usual. Crowd here for a bowl of pottage and a bad decision. No, these are the unwanted guests, nobles on a secret mission, spies with nothing to lose, and political schemers whose idea of a wild night is collecting blackmail material for later. Let's start with the nobles. They arrive in disguise, or so they think. Just a humble merchant, says the man whose boots cost more than the whole establishment. He's nervous, clutching his purse and watching every shadow. He's not here for pleasure. He's here to catch someone else in the act. Maybe it's a rival, a rebellious cousin, or even his own son. Nobles use the brothel like a chessboard, moving pieces around for advantage. If the madam is lucky, she gets a hefty tip to forget the noble was ever there. If not, she's left with a house full of jumpy staff and customers who suddenly remember urgent business elsewhere. Then come the spies. You never know they're spies until it's too late. But afterward, everyone swears they knew all along. They linger in corners, pretending to drink, listening with an intensity that could curdle milk. Their questions are casual, but somehow you end up telling them more than you meant. They ask about the mayor, the bishop, even the cook's opinion on politics. By the time you realize you've said too much, they're gone, and the rumor mill is off. To the races. Sometimes the brothel is visited by a recruiter for a questionable crusade or dubious adventure to distant lands. These types promise riches, glory, and most suspicious of all, clean water. They're looking for strong arms, loose lips, and anyone desperate enough to sign up. Most of the staff have learned to feign sudden heat itches, develop pressing chores, or vanish behind a strategically placed curtain until the recruiter gives up. The last person who agreed to join a holy cause spent 3 weeks digging ditches outside a monastery and came back with a new appreciation for indoor plumbing. Blackmailers are the worst of all. They come in quietly, making notes, watching for slips, a secret traced here, a misplaced letter there. They don't care about the house rules, the madam's glares, or even Brutus's snore. Their weapon is information, and they wield it with all the subtlety of a drop chamber pot. The staff know to watch their words, cover their tracks, and if all else fails, threaten to set the goat on anyone who gets too nosy. On these nights, the atmosphere shifts. The usual laughter is quieter, conversation shorter, and everyone makes a point of looking very busy. No one wants to draw attention. The regular customers sense it too, suddenly remembering family back. Home or work to do in the morning. On life, most oblivious keep drinking, and even they start to lower their voices and check the corners for listeners. The madame, of course, has her own strategies. She makes a show of cleaning tables, moving from group to group, eyes sharp as ever. If she doesn't like what she hears, she's been known to accidentally spill ale on incriminating documents or orchestrate a spontaneous sing-along loud enough to drown out any secret deals. Sometimes she sends Brutus to sit next to the worst offenders. A little dog drool does wonders for discouraging loose talk. So, what do you do when you spot an unwanted guest? The answer is simple. You pretend to be asleep, busy, or temporarily deaf. If you're really nervous, you can always claim you're just the cook. After all, nobody ever suspects the person stirring the stew. By morning, the odd guest has slipped away. The staff exchange knowing glances, and the brothel returns to its usual brand of chaos. In a world where secrets are currency, the medieval brothel is a bank with very wobbly walls. And some nights the best defense is a yawn, a locked door, and a good story for the next round of gossip. For every ailment, there's a home remedy involving leeches, boiled herbs, or just rubbing onions on the problem area. Doctor is a generous term. Hopeful amateur is more accurate. In the medieval brothel, you quickly learn that medicine is less about science and more about optimistic experimentation, equal parts superstition, kitchen improvisation, and enthusiastic trial and error. If you stub your toe, catch a cough, or come down with a mysterious rash, likely from the mattress, definitely not from the soup, you'll be prescribed something that would terrify modern pharmacists. The only real rule, if it doesn't help, at least it should taste so bad you'll regret complaining in the first place. Let's start with the classics. Leeches are the Swiss Army knife of medieval medicine. Sore throat, leeches, fever, more leeches. With serious swelling, leeches, and for good measure, a vigorous prayer. The brothel has a medical kit in the kitchen. A small jar of wriggling bloodsuckers, a clump of dried sage, a mostly empty bottle of strong vinegar, and a wooden spoon so battered it could tell its own life story. If the madam catches you looking pale, she either recommend a leech or ask if you've been eating the bread again. Herbal remedies are everywhere. The workers pass around bundles of dried lavender, mint, and thyme tied together with string and optimism. If you can name the plant, you can probably make a tea out of it. Got a headache? Try boiled willow bark. If the bitterness doesn't cure you, it might just distract you. Trouble sleeping? Poppy seeds in warm milk, but just a pinch. Unless you fancy hallucinating about the goat running for mayor. Onions are the house favorite. They're rubbed on bruises, applied to bites, and placed under pillows to ward off bad humors. Sometimes they're stuffed in socks to draw out the illness. Whether or not it works, you'll be the healthiest smelling person in the room, which in a brothel is really saying something. When it comes to wounds and cuts, the first line of defense is a clean rag, if you can find one. Then comes a mixture of honey and herbs, slapped on with genuine hope. Honey is the medieval equivalent of a miracle drug. It's sticky, sweet, and rumored to fix everything except heartbreak and taxes. And if the wound looks infected, time for the most terrifying cure of all, hot iron. Yes, cauterization. It's as painful as it sounds and almost as common as people. Pretending not to faint at the sight. Superstitions fill the gaps where medicine fails. which is often someone always has a tale about a cousin who cured the pox by burying a toad under the front step, or a neighbor who survived fever by sleeping with a silver coin in their mouth. The madam keeps a sprig of rue above the door, swearing it wards off plague, bad luck, and most importantly, unwanted visits from her mother dash and dash law dot. When truly desperate, people turn to the local barber surgeon. He's the one who sharpens knives, pulls teeth, trims hair, and on brave days attempts surgery. His qualifications: a steady hand, a collection of rags, and a cheerful disregard for the patient's opinion. Anesthesia: hold the stick, bite down, and try not to scream too loud. The neighbors are listening. Success is defined as the patient didn't immediately die. Every brothel worker becomes a semi-professional nurse, swapping cures, warnings, and tall tales with every cup of ale. There's always a new potion making the rounds, sometimes recommended by a passing friar, sometimes invented on the spot. Did you know vinegar and rosemary can fix a sore throat? No, that's because it can't. But it'll certainly make you feel like you tried everything. So next time you sneeze, be grateful for modern medicine and antibiotics. In the medieval brothel, your only real hope is a good herbal pus, a brave face, and the knowledge that at worst you'll become the topic off next week's gossip. Here health is as much about belief as biology, and hope, like leeches, is always in ready supply. Dawn brings a reckoning. You count your coins, your bruises, and your remaining optimism. Most workers just hope the cook remembered to skim the rat out of the breakfast stew. Let's talk about the morning after, the time when reality staggers back into the brothel and everyone surveys the battlefield. The oil lamps are guttering out. Brutus the dog is snoring in the warm ashes of the hearth. And the last drunken customer has finally stopped declaring his undying love to a barmaid and passed out with his head in an empty ale barrel. The shared room is a tapestry of tangled limbs, straw, and the sound of someone quietly regretting every life decision that led them here. Your first task, a full-body inventory. Did you survive the night with all your personal belongings? Are your socks still yours, or did the goat steal them again? Are there any new bruises, and can you remember how you got them? In a medieval brothel, a night's work almost always leaves a mark. Sometimes from an overenthusiastic customer, sometimes from slipping on a rogue turnip in the hallway, sometimes from the madame's wooden spoon during a particularly spirited argument about house rules, and don't forget the classic injury. Elbowed in the ribs during the mad scramble for the warmest spot on the straw pallet. Then it's time to count the coins. You empty your pouch and pray it's heavier than it feels. The house always takes its cut. Brutus gets his breakfast, and what's left is barely enough for a heel of bread, or if you're feeling fancy, a sniff of the communal soap. There's a round of hushed complaints as the workers compare takings. Some made out well, some barely broke even. And everyone is a little suspicious of Marjorie, who always seems to have just one more silver piece than anyone else. Now, the true test, breakfast. The kitchen is already filled with the comforting, or at least distracting aroma of bubbling pottage. On a good day, there's bread and maybe even an egg. On a bad day, the stew is thicker than the evening's gossip, and you quietly fish out anything that looks suspiciously like a tale. The bravest souls add a dash of dried herbs and pretend it's a culinary adventure. Everyone else just closes their eyes and chews quickly. The conversation over breakfast is a blend of exhausted laughter and whispered postmortems. Who got the best tip? Who's never inviting the local blacksmith to sing again? Did anyone see what happened to the loot? There's always a new rumor about a nobleman's disastrous disguise, the dog's heroic intervention in a brawl, or the latest customer who forgot to pay and is now doing dishes for the rest of the week. Between bites, you take a moment to fix whatever damage was done to your outfit. A new tear in the sleeve, a stain of mysterious origin, or that one missing button you swear was there yesterday. You either laundry pile and consider whether today is the day you finally wash your tunic, or if once again a quick airing by the window will have to do. Hygiene is still a relative concept, especially after a night's work in close quarters with livestock, people, and at least one unlucky rat. Despite everything, there's a certain camaraderie in the aftermath. Everyone made it through another night, and for a few minutes, you're united by the simple joys of shared misery and survival. Jokes are cracked, stories exaggerated, and the Madame herself sometimes softens enough to pour an extra cup of weak ale for the hardest worker. Even the goat seems a bit more generous, sharing a corner of straw and miraculously not biting anyone's toes. Before the next shift begins, there's a lull, a precious sliver of peace. Some people doze in the corner, others sneak out for a bit of sun, and a few ambitious souls set about patching up whatever the night broke. The morning after is a reminder. Life in a medieval brothel was never easy, often bruising, but somehow always survivable, and with any luck, the stew will be rat-free, at least for today. Occasionally, someone actually falls in love in a brothel. This is universally regarded as a terrible idea, but that doesn't stop anyone from trying. Expect heartbreak, dramatic declarations, and at least one song about lost love. Let's set the record straight. Love in a medieval brothel is less storybook romance and more cautionary fable. This is not the place where Prince and Porpa ride off into the sunset. It's the place where you learn that the only thing more fleeting than your wages is the premise whispered after 3 cups of ale and a hard day's work. Still, hope springs eternal, even in a house built on secrets and staged smiles. The classic tale goes like this. A newcomer arrives, nervous and wide-eyed, convinced they'll keep their hearts safe. Maybe it's a traveling poet with a knack for a tragic verse, or a merchant son determined to rescue a fallen angel. For the first few nights, everything seems magical. They leave love notes tucked under straw mattresses and sneak extra treats from the kitchen. Suddenly, every song in the common room is about doomed lovers, and even Brutus the dog looks embarrassed by the mowed sign. The object of affection is always a brothel worker, tough as old boots, clever as the madam herself, and politely unimpressed by romantic gestures. Flowers are rare, and when they do appear, they're usually snatched from the herb garden or filched from a churchyard. One worker still brags about the time a customer serenaded her with a borrowed lute, out of tune, in the rain, and interrupted halfway through by the goat. Everyone knows it's a bad idea, but that's never stopped anyone. There are always dramatic declarations by candlelight, secret rendezvous behind the ale barrels, and inevitably a public spat when reality sets in. Sometimes a customer gets so carried away they propose marriage right there in the main room, usually after the 4th cup of wine, and often with the wrong Marjorie. It's a brothel tradition to accept, at least until the morning after, when both parties sober up and discover that real life is not a ballad. And yet, real affection does develop now and then. A shared joke, a knowing glance, a whispered promise to split the tips on a busy night. These quiet romances are less about destiny and more about survival. In a world where trust is as rare as clean laundry, a true companion is something to hold on to. Even if only for a little while, of course, there are heartbreaks. A customer leaves for another town, never to return. A worker tires of moonlight serenades and chase next dream, or just someone with a better bread ration. The love songs shift from hope to heartbreak, and the communal sympathy is dispensed along with the morning's weak ale. More than one person has sworn off love forever, only to be caught blushing by the fire the very next week. The madam has her own views. She claims romance is bad for business. Nothing ruins the night's income like a jealous lover or a surprise proposal. She'd tell any dreamy-eyed worker. Love's a luxury, darling, rent's not. But even she has been spotted softening during a particularly sappy song or quietly arranging for a pair of sweethearts to share the good blanket just once. Occasionally, these brothel romances outlast the walls themselves. A few couples run away together, starting new lives in far-off towns, living on memories of stolen kisses and candle-lit promises. Most, though, simply fade into the daily hum of life, fuel for gossip, inspiration for the next song, or just another chapter in the long, complicated love affair between hope and reality. So, if you're thinking about finding love in a medieval brothel, remember, it's complicated. It's messy, and it's rarely ever as it seems. But for a few precious hours, even the hardest hearts can be softened by a good song, a soft word, and maybe, just maybe, a promise kept until sunrise. Buttons are rare, laces are everywhere, and every night someone gets stuck, tangled, or accidentally undressed in front of the wrong customer. The brothel handyman is in high demand. Welcome to the wardrobe wars, where the greatest hazard isn't what's in the cottage, it's what's holding your tunic together. In a medieval brothel, the dress code is a patchwork miracle, barely clinging to dignity by a series of strings, knots, and hope. Buttons, those marvels of modern convenience, are almost mythical here. If you spot one, odds are it's holding together the madam's favorite cloak, or has been sewn on for pure decoration, admired from a distance but never actually used. Instead, it's all about laces, long, unpredictable, and always ready to betray you at the worst possible moment. Each shift starts with a familiar routine. Someone cursing at a stubborn knot, another worker frantically hunting for a missing shoelace, and Marjorie, yes, that Marjorie, expertly rethreading her stays for the 5th time this week. If you think tying your shoes is tricky, imagine corsets with strings long enough to trip over, waistcoats that require a friend's assistance, and shifts that seem to develop new holes with every wash. There's a running joke in the house that the fastest way to end up undressed isn't with a customer. It's by losing a wrestling match with your own clothing. Laces tangle in hair, catch on furniture, and occasionally unite in a conspiracy to pull apart your entire outfit with one wrong move. Accidental flashes or a nightly event met with laughter, sympathetic applause, or if the timing is particularly unfortunate, a hasty dash behind the nearest curtain. Spoiler, there are never enough curtains. That Brothel handyman is a local legend. Part toa, part magician, and part saint. Armed with an assortment of needles, strong thread, and the patience of someone who has seen it all. He spends his evenings patching elbows, mending seams, and untangling knots that look more like ancient, maritime puzzles than functional fashion. He's also the unofficial keeper of spare laces, an invaluable currency when yours inevitably snaps right before a busy night. Sometimes the malfunctions are minor. A shift that slips a little too low, a stocking that refuses to stay up, or a petticoat that threatens to migrate south every time you sneeze. Other times it's full-blown chaos. Laces that unravel at the worst possible moment, sending sleeves flying and skirts collapsing. There's the infamous tale of the great trousers incident, in which a new apprentice eager to impress found herself literally tripped up and landed headfirst in the communal stew. Her dignity survived, but her shoes did not. Customers, too, are not immune. After a few rounds of ale, more than one visitor has gotten hopelessly entangled, requiring rescue by a worker who's trying very hard not to laugh. There are also the show-offs, the ones who insist they can untie anything with one hand. They rarely succeed. Instead, they end up red-faced, wrestling with a stubborn bodice while the room takes bets on which will give out first, the laces or their patience. Everyone develops their own coping mechanisms, some pre-tied tricky knots before their shift, Others swear by lucky laces, often just the sturdiest piece of string in reach. And the more seasoned workers have mastered the art of the quick change, tucking behind a strategically placed screen and emerging moments later, fully reassembled, hair and composure mostly intact. Despite the nightly chaos, there's a certain camaraderie in the wardrobe struggle. Helping a friend lace up, swap tunics, or recover from a catastrophic slip is just another part of life here. A ritual as familiar as counting coins or dodging. Brute aesthetic, laughter, eye rolls, and the occasional boast about having gone an entire week without a wardrobe malfunction are the bonds that hold the place together, even when the clothes don't. So if you ever find yourself in a medieval brothel, remember, never underestimate a humble lace. Always befriend the handyman and know that modesty is optional, but a sense of humor is absolutely essential. Not everyone here is above a little. Side hustle. Keep an eye on your purse, your shoes, and your breakfast. If something goes missing, check under the dog. The medieval brothel is not a place for the naive or the trusting. It's a swirling mass of opportunity, desperation, and, let's be honest, sticky fingers. The only thing more common than a bad case of the sniffles is the sudden disappearance of whatever you foolishly left unattended. Everyone has their angle in a house filled with low wages, high debts, and too many mouths to feed. A little creative redistribution of wealth is just part of the nightly routine. First rule of survival, guard your purse like it's made of gold. Even if it only contains a single copper and a button you swear will be lucky one day. The moment you turn your back, that purse could grow legs and walk off on its own. Most brothel workers tie their money bags to their waist, then hide them under a second layer of clothing, then sit on them for good measure. There are stories about a legendary thief who once managed to steal a coin, pouch tied around a customer's neck while he was still awake. Shoes are another hot commodity. You'd think nobody would bother with a pair of battered boots that smell. Like last week's cottage, but in the brothel, footwear is as good as currency. A decent pair can be sold, traded, or if you're very lucky, used as a bribe to get out of kitchen duty. The cleverest thieves swap out shoes with ones a size too small, leaving the original owner to puzzle over whether they've suddenly grown or just been the victim of the world's least satisfying con. Breakfast, too, is never truly safe. That last crust of bread you stashed for later gone. The bit of cheese you tucked behind the jug vanished. Even the heartiest eggs have been known to disappear between kitchen and table, spirited away by someone with nimble fingers and a desperate stomach. There's a running joke that if you ever find an extra piece of meat in your cottage, it's probably been stolen and returned twice before it got to you. The real art is knowing where to look when things go missing. Under the straw mattress of course, tucked inside a pillowcase, naturally. But if you're clever, you always check under Brutus the dog. The brothel's bouncer has a knack for sleeping on top of the most valuable loot. Whether it's a half-eaten sausage or a customer's missing sock, he doesn't care who owns it. If it's soft, tasty, or smells interesting, it's his. Now, of course, not all the thieves are professionals. Some are just hungry, desperate, or bored. There are small-time hustlers who trade stolen apples for gossip, and pickpockets who'd rather pinch a handkerchief than risk a real fight. The madam, always one step ahead, keeps a lost and found box behind the bar filled with everything from rings to mismatched gloves to a mysterious jar of pickled onions that nobody dares claim. When something important vanishes, there's a brothel-wide search. Part scavenger hunt, part blame game. Accusations fly, alliances form and dissolve, and the actual thief usually joins in the hunt, just to keep suspicion off themselves. The seasoned workers know that the real trick isn't just not getting caught. It's not getting caught twice in one night. Repeat offenders are put on latrine duty or forced to tell the madam's least favorite bedtime story to Brutus. who listens intently and then falls asleep on their feet. Petty crime is woven into the fabric of brothel life. It's the source of countless arguments, inside jokes, and creative solutions. After all, if you can't find your breakfast, maybe you borrow someone else's. If your only clean shirt is missing, try the laundry pile. Just hope you don't grab something belonging to the cook. And when all else fails, shrug, laugh, and move on. In the end, what goes around comes around, usually in the form of someone else's missing sock. So, if you're new to the medieval brothel, remember, trust no one, label everything, and always keep an eye on Brutus. Because in a house of thieves among thieves, the only true crime is leaving your breakfast unguarded. In the medieval brothel, animals serve as bedwarmers, burglar alarms, and occasional emergency food. They're also remarkably opinionated about your singing voice. Let's be honest, when you imagine sharing a room in a brothel, your first worry probably isn't, will a goat eat my pillow? But here, in the ever-surprising world of medieval hospitality, animals are as much a part of brothel life as drafty. Windows and mysterious stains. The house is a bustling menagerie where dogs, cats, chickens, and, of course, the infamous goat are not so much guests as unruly four-legged staff members. Take the goat, for example. He's not named because everyone agrees that would give him too much power. He roams the brothel with the entitlement of a landlord who's months behind on repairs. His resume includes bedwarmer, whether you want him or not, burglar deterrent. His headbutt is legendary and culinary emergency backup. No one mentions this. Within earshot, just in case he understands common, he has a taste for tunic hems, bread crusts, and any unattended laundry. Leave your blanket on the floor and it's his by midnight. Try to sing off key and you'll get a bleat so judgmental it might as well come with a performance review. The chickens are next on the list of animal roommates. Technically, they're supposed to stay outside, but try explaining boundaries to a bird that survived 3 winters and a minor kitchen fire. They're the brothel's built-in alarm system, squawking at every unfamiliar footstep and occasionally launching thumbsbills into bed to warm up. Eggs are a treat if you find one before the goat does, and feathers in your hair are a nightly inevitability. If you're really unlucky, a chicken will decide your chest is the perfect roost at 3 o'clock in the morning, leaving you with a heart rate worthy of a night in battle. Then there's Brutus, the house dog and bouncer. As much a roommate as a bodyguard, Brutus picks his sleeping spot based on the prime real estate, wherever the floor is warmest or wherever someone just left food unattended. If he decides you're his favorite, you might get to share your straw mat with 120 pounds of drooling, snoring loyalty. Just hope he's not in one of his protective moods, or you'll be trapped until dawn, held hostage by a paw the size of a hammock. Don't forget the cats. Every brothel has at least one, often more, slinking in and out through windows, catching mice, and stealing the choicest scraps from the kitchen. They keep the rodent population down somewhat, and everyone quietly hopes. The local priests won't notice them and start muttering about witches again. Cats are less judgmental than goats, but more selective. They'll only curl up with you if you've had a particularly bad day, or if you're wearing something black. Animal roommates add a certain unpredictability to life. You learn to check your shoes for surprises. Guard your breakfast with one hand, and never ever leave anything edible within a goat's line of sight. Sometimes you're woken not by the dawn, but by a heated turf war between a rooster and a mouse, both of whom consider themselves senior staff. It's not exactly restful, but the house is never dull. On the upside, animals provide comfort. Their warmth is real on winter nights, their antics a source of endless entertainment, and their unconditional presence a strange kind of companionship in a world where trust is a precious commodity. The goat might chew your cloak, but he'll also chase off strangers. Brutus might steal your pillow, but he'll snarl at any animal threatens you. The chickens might break the silence, but at least you'll never sleep through a fire. So if you're settling in for another unpredictable night, tuck your socks under your head, keep one eye on your breakfast, and remember, in the medieval brothel, your animal roommates aren't pets. They're survivors, comedians, and sometimes the best friends you never ask for. Just don't expect them to respect your privacy or your singing. After one night, you're already planning your escape. Whether it's marriage to a customer, running off with a lute player, or just hiding in a barrel until spring, every plan seems more plausible after a night here. Welcome to the morning after, when the cottage still tastes suspicious. The bruises are fresh, and you've spent another sleepless hour listening to the goat critique you're snoring. Your priorities have shifted. You no longer dream of riches or romance, just a quick exit with both shoes and your dignity intact. The Ergetto escape is as old as brothel life itself, and you'll soon discover that everyone here has at least one harebrained scheme brewing just under the surface. First up is the marriage strategy. Maybe you're hoping a wealthy customer will fall madly in love, blind to the lice, the questionable cuisine, and the fact that your best dress once belonged to 3 other people. The brothel is filled with whispered tales of workers who married a merchant and vanished to a better life. Of course, nobody knows where they ended up, and rumor has it most just moved 2 streets over and started another business. Still, you practice your best smile, adjust your patchwork tunic, and remind yourself that miracles happen, just maybe not here. Then there's the romantic getaway with the lute player. It always seems possible late at night when the candlelight is soft and the music almost drowns out the coughing from the next room. Lute players with their dreamy eyes and wandering hands are the medieval equivalent of rock stars. Irresistible, utterly unreliable. Still, you can't help but picture yourself running off to join a traveling troupe until you remember that they sleep in carts, eat even worse stew, and have a suspiciously high turnover rate for lutes. For those less interested in romance and more invested in sheer survival, there's always the classic hide until the coast is clear technique. Barrels, houghs, and even the laundry basket have all been pressed into service by aspiring escapees. One worker once spent a whole afternoon wedged behind the ale casks, only to be discovered when the goat took an unusual interest in the arrangement. Others try blending in with the morning delivery crew or faking illness so convincingly that even the madam starts to worry, though not enough to let you skip your shift. There's also the dream of finding another trade, learning to bake, weaving, or maybe becoming an apprentice to the local apothecary until you realize it's just more pottage, but with extra herbs and fewer tips. But leaving is harder than it sounds. Brothel life is a strange mix of comfort and chaos. A place where you know the rules, however absurd, and where at least the animals are predictable. The outside world is filled with dangers. Highwaymen, starvation, or worst of all, running into the priest who knows exactly where you've been. Of course, the most daring plotters consider a group escape. The plan goes something like this. We'll pull our money, leave at midnight, and make for the next town. Inevitably, the plan falls apart after the first round of ale. When someone remembers they can't leave their shoes, someone else confesses a secret love for Brutus the dog, and the third can't bear to part with the kitchen's only sharp knife. There's even a running joke about the secret tunnel under the brothel, which supposedly leads to freedom or the neighbor's pigsty, depending on who you ask. Everyone pretends to believe in it, especially the madam who likes to keep hope alive. Just enough to prevent an actual mutiny. Yet for all the plotting and daydreaming, most workers stay. The brothel, for all its flaws, is a known chaos. A place where, against all odds, you survive another night and find a way to laugh about it. In the morning, Besides, the goat gets lonely if you're gone too long, and nobody else knows how to tie the curtains just right. So as you either near a sparrow, practice your innocent traveler face, or hatch your next escape plan with the lute player, remember sometimes surviving here is an escape in itself, and if you ever do make it out, try not to look back, unless, of course, you left your shoes under Brutus again. Finally, every brothel has its share of ghost stories, usually about a former customer who didn't pay or a love-struck monk who never left. If you hear whispering in the night, it's either a ghost or just the rats holding a council meeting. It's late. The candles are sputtering and the ale is running low. This is when the real stories start, the kind that make you tuck your feet a little closer and glance nervously at the curtain fluttering in the draft. In a place where sleep is always in short supply and strange noises are the norm, it's little wonder that every brothel develops its own catalog of the supernatural. The most famous tale is always about the unpaid guest. He's described in different ways. Sometimes a swaggering merchant, sometimes a bashful farm boy, sometimes a nobleman who thought he could skip out on his bill. The details change with each telling, but the ending never does. He vanishes into the night, owing a handful of silver, and is cursed to wander the halls forever, rattling his empty purse and sighing about a misunderstanding with the madam. Some say you can still hear the faint jingle of his coins on stormy nights, or spot a shadowy figure lurking near the chamber pot, forever searching for a lost boot. There's also the legend of the lover monk who visited for a bowl of stew and never left. The story goes that he fell so hopelessly in love with a worker named Marjorie, there's always a Marjorie, that he lingers still whispering prayers and sweet nothings from the dark corners. He's blamed for every unexplained draft, flickering candle, and missing loaf of bread. If you ever find your blanket tugged just as you're drifting off, it's probably not the goat this time. It's the lovesick ghost making sure no one ever gets a full night's sleep. Other spirits are less sentimental. The weeping lady is said to haunt the attic, eternally mourning a lost romance, or maybe just her last paycheck. Workers say she appears only on the coldest nights, bringing with her a chill so sharp it freezes the morning pottage. No one goes to the attic alone, and if the cat hisses at the ceiling, everyone decides it's a fine night to sleep downstairs. Then there are the mischievous poltergeists blamed for every wardrobe malfunction. Missing sock and unexplained puddle on the floor. Some swear the spirits play tricks, switching shoes, moving coins, or hiding the key to the strong box just as the Madame Gusto count the night's takings. The cook claims her best ladle is cursed, always turning up in the strangest places, under the dog, wedged in a bed frame, or once in the stew itself. Not every haunting is scary. Some of the brothel's ghosts are just tales to explain away the more peculiar realities of brothel life. Mysterious stains, creaky floorboards, and the odd persistent scent of turnips where there should be none. When the house gets too quiet, someone will tap on a wall or drop a coin just to keep up appearances, and maybe spook a newcomer for fun. Of course, the rats are real enough. They're not ghosts, just ambitious tenants who treat the brothel like their personal kingdom. If you hear whispering in the night, it might be the council of rats debating who gets the choicest crumbs, or plotting to overthrow Brutus as the true master of the house. In the morning, their tiny footprints across the flour prove that, supernatural or not, something's always awake before you. Despite the chills and the late-night scares, the ghost stories are oddly comforting. They're part of the brothel's shared lore, a way to laugh off what can't be explained, bond over a good fright, and keep hope alive that if you stick around long enough, you too might become a legend. So as you settle into your haunted bed, listening to the sounds of the old house creaking, and the rats whispering about unionizing, just remember, Every brothel has its ghosts. It's surviving the living that's the real trick. Birthdays in the brothel area, rare luxury. Mostly an excuse for a slightly bigger slice of bread and a cup of special ale. That's just the usual stuff with a wilted sprig of mint. The lucky birthday. Worker is celebrated with a hand-sewn crown recycled from last year's maple. A song so off-key the goat howls along and a small parade around the common room. The madam delivers a rousing speech. Brutus the dog sniffs for contraband cake, and someone inevitably tells a story about that one time the mayor tried to jump out the window. It's chaotic, heartfelt, and over before you know it. But for one night, even the draftiest room feels a little warmer, if not any cleaner. Birthdays, of course, are never celebrated on the actual day. Nobody knows exactly when they were born, only that it was cold, or there was a fair, or the chickens laid 2 eggs instead of 1. The date is chosen democratically, meaning whichever. Evening someone remembers to mention it, or whenever spirits are low, and everyone needs an excuse to pause for something almost like joy. Preparations for a brothel birthday begin in secret and end in uproar. Someone is tasked with baking a cake, which in brothel terms means finding the least stale loaf, dusting it with flour, and sticking a candle or a slightly singed twig on. Top. The kitchen staff, always up for a challenge, try to locate a raisin, or failing that, just carve a smiley face into the bread with a blunt knife. Rumor has it that the birthday cake once contained an actual currant, but that might just be legend. Nobody's been able to prove it, and the only witness is the goat. The birthday crown is another tradition, a tangled loop of ribbons, bread crusts, and whatever wildflowers the apprentices manage to swipe from the neighbor's garden. It's ceremoniously placed on the guest of honor's head, sometimes accompanied by a polite round of applause and a less polite comment about how well it hides the lice. The crown rarely fits, usually tilts, and sometimes causes the dog to bark with suspicion. When the time comes, the whole house gathers, workers, customers, the madam, the animals, and anyone else who happened to wander and looking for warmth or a spare cup of ale. The madam gives her annual speech, which is equal parts affectionate roast and rousing call to arms. May you age better than last week's pottage. May your purse grow heavier, and may you always be one step ahead of the bafe. This is followed by a group performance of the birthday song, a tune unique to the brothel featuring improvised lyrics and the mystical harmonies of people who never learned to sing or cared to. No birthday is complete without a round of dubious party games. There's pin the tail on the goat, high risk, low reward, a relay race involving ale mugs, and at least 3 wardrobe malfunctions, and the infamous guest who ate the last apple. Prizes are typically practical: a patched sock, a bit of string, or the honor of not cleaning the privy for a day. Sometimes the madam even unears a relic from the prize box, which could be anything from a chippet comb to a mysterious key nobody's been able to identify since 1349. Inevitably, the stories begin. Everyone has a favorite birthday memory, and most of them end with, and then the candle set the tablecloth on fire. Someone tells the tale of the time the mayor joined the party in disguise, got caught trying to dance the hornpipe, and nearly escaped out the window, foiled only by his own velvet breeches. Laughter fills the room, customers cheer, and for a few precious hours, the everyday grind of brothel life is replaced by something that looks suspiciously like real celebration. Even Brutus the dog joins in, lumbering from lap to lap in search of cake crumbs, pausing only to nuzzle the birthday worker and leave a present of suspiciously wet affection. The goat, always the attention seeker, tries to eat the crown and is rewarded with an extra turnip unless he steals it himself. As the candles gutter low and the mint in the ale wilts beyond recognition, the party fades. There's cleaning up to do, customers to see out, and another long night ahead. But for just one evening, everyone feels seen, celebrated, and part of something a little brighter than the usual routine. The crown is hung up, the last crumb devoured, and the stories added to the brothel's ever-growing legend. And so birthdays in the brothel come and go. Short, sweet, chaotic, and utterly unforgettable, in a world that offers precious few excuses. To celebrate, the smallest cake and the silliest crown can make the draftiest room feel almost like home. Occasionally, a distant cousin or well-meaning sibling shows up at the brothel's front door, clutching a sack of laundry and a head full of questions. Cue the scramble, workers swap names, invent respectable jobs. Yes, I'm the town's official candle tester. And pray the madam's glare doesn't scare off Aunt Agnes before she delivers the promised pie. The visit is a delicate dance of half-truths and nervous laughter with everyone on their best behavior until the relatives leave or, worse, decide to stay for dinner. Afterward, the staff collapse in exhausted relief, counting their blessings that nobody asked to see the guest book. Let's set the scene. There's an extra clatter at the door, an unfamiliar knock. Not the confident rap of a customer or the furtive tap of a town guard. No, this is the hesitant double tap of family. The kind that says, I brought a pie, but really means I'm here to ask just enough questions to ruin your afternoon. The first to spot the relative raises the alarm. Whispers ripple through the house. Whose aunt is that? Quick, hide the dice. Somebody fetch a clean apron? No, the other clean apron. The transformation is instantaneous. One moment, the common room is a whirlwind of laughter and mild chaos. The next, it's a study in medieval respectability. The house's most notorious. Flirt is suddenly the assistant cook, and the loudest gambler becomes the night shift bookkeeper. Even Brutus, sensing the change in atmosphere, assumes his most dignified sprawl. All four legs arranged neatly, head high, until the aroma of pie reminds him of his true priorities. Meanwhile, the visiting relative is ushered inside with the reverence reserved for saints and tax collectors. She surveys the surroundings, eyes lingering on the patched curtains and the suspiciously lively game of chess played with ale mugs and chicken bones. The introductions are masterclass in improvisation. This is Marjorie. She's in charge of guest relations. And this is Will. He fixes things. Nobody specifies what things are, and Aunt Agnes wisely doesn't ask. Questions come. Next, soft at first, then more pointed. You seem busy, dear. Do you work long hours? Is that the same tunic I sent you last Easter? And why does the dog have his own bowl at the table? Answers are equally vague. Oh, the hours are steady. Yes, laundry day is tomorrow. Brutus is on a special diet. There's a silent shared hope that the pie, a little burnt on one edge, but a miracle nonetheless, will be enough to keep the conversation from straying into dangerous territory. Every now and then, a relative gets too comfortable and starts wandering. Suddenly, 3 workers are blocking the staircase. Drafty up there. We keep it closed. And someone is loudly describing the town's most recent market day disaster as a distraction. The guest book, a battered ledger stuffed with code names and doodles, is quietly spirited away to the kitchen under guard by both the madam and the goat just in case. Then comes dinner. If the relative stays, the tension ratchets up. Every mouthful of pottage is a gamble. Will they comment on the taste, the portion size, the goat eating from the serving bowl? Miraculously, most family members choose tact over honesty. After all, everyone knows that criticizing a host's pottage, even in a brothel, is a social faux purse too gray for words. Dessert, if there is any, is a careful affair. Maybe a wrinkled apple appears, or a cup of the house's special wine. The conversation turns to safe topics, weather, distant cousins. How nice it is that everyone here seems so close. Meanwhile, under the table, Notes are passed and feet are stepped on as workers silently debate who has to take Aunt Agnes on the tour of the garden, read goat enclosure. The farewell is a performance unto itself. Heartfelt hugs, promises to visit soon, and a gentle nudge toward the door. Don't forget your pie tin. Give my regards to Uncle Ned. Once the door closes, the whole house breathes a collective sigh. Equal parts relief and exhaustion. Later, when the relatives' footsteps fade, the brothel returns to normal. Laughter resumes. The chess pieces revert to their true function as drinking tokens, and the pieces are picked clean by Brutus and inevitably the goat. The stories will be retold for weeks. How Marjorie pretended to be the town's candle tester. How Will almost gave away the game with. An offhand comment about the mayor's doublet. How Aunt Agnes asked why so many people here share the same last name. It's just a very common name, aren't he? Family visits are always awkward, occasionally disastrous, and ultimately bonding in their own ridiculous way. And if nothing else, at least everyone got a slice of pie and a fresh batch of stories for the next round of gossip. The brothel isn't the only game in town. There are rival houses up the street, each with their own madam, their own rules, and their own fierce loyalty to their chosen brand of cheap perfume. Competition is cutthroat and mostly petty, missing laundry, swap signboards, or a goat mysteriously painted blue. On festival days, the turf war spills into the open with rival workers trying to out-sing, out-dance, and out-insult each other while the townsfolk place bets on who'll be first to start a food fight. Despite the drama, there's a twisted camaraderie. After all, nothing unites the district faster than a surprise raid by the church. The unwritten rule is simple. The market's not big enough for everyone to thrive, but it's just large enough to sustain an endless series of mildly inconvenient acts of sabotage. Your house might have the best stew or the softest straw. Debatable, but next door claims to have the best service with a smile and fewer goats inside the bedrooms. Competition never truly sleeps, especially when coin purses are thin and rumors are thick as the town fog. Take the infamous signboard swap, for example. One foggy morning, our house woke up to find our battered wooden sign missing, replaced by a plank promising spiritual cleansing and honest fun. Ask for Sister Agnes. Meanwhile, 3 streets away, the rival house discovered their sign, now sporting a mustache, a questionable drawing, and hastily painted slogan, "All chickens welcome." For days, confused customers wandered from door to door, unsure whether they'd find a night of pleasure or a sermon about repentance. Laundry is another front in this silent war. If your socks go missing, don't blame the goat. Check next door's washing line. Rival houses are notorious for borrowing undergarments, tunics, and especially the good aprons. Nothing sows discord faster than finding your best petticoat paraded past your own window, now sporting someone else's perfume in a suspicious patch where your name used to be. Petty pranks are the bread and butter of brothel rivalry. Once a rival sent over a basket of welcome apples, each one hollowed out and stuffed with pickled onions. Our reply was swift. We filled their privy with a sack of frogs and hung a banner reading, "For a riveting good time, visit next door." Even Brutus the dogged involved, sneaking across enemy lines to steal sausages during a rival's house feast, then returning home with a string of lens and the air of a conquering hero. The festival season, however, is when the rivalry reaches its dramatic peak. The streets become a stage for open competition, with rival workers lining up on opposite sides, armed with nothing but loud voices, questionable choreography, and slightly off-key instruments. The sing-off is legendary. Each side tries to drown the other out with sporty ballads and boasts about the softness of their beds or the discretion of their staff. Dancing contests quickly devolve into comic pantomimes. Who can balance a bread roll on their head? Who can juggle the most onions? Or who can get the crowd laughing hardest at the rival house's expense? Of course, pranks escalate. There was the year someone dyed a rival's goat bright blue, a color that lingered for months, much to the poor animal's dismay and the neighborhood's amusement. Another time, the water barrel out front was spiked with a concoction so sour. The entire block spent the next day, thirstier than ever, and blaming each other for the potion of doom. No one ever confesses to these misdeeds, but everyone suspects. Marjorie from either house. Still, there's an odd sense of kinship amid all the sniping. The madams, for all their bluster, have been known to share a drink at the end of a particular rowdy festival, comparing notes on stubborn customers and ungrateful goats. Rival workers swap stories behind the privies, and when the church comes marching down the street with fire and brimstone in hand, every feud is instantly forgotten. Suddenly, everyone is family, united by a shared goal. Hiding the best customers, scrubbing suspicious stains, and pretending for one glorious hour that nobody has ever painted a goat. Because in the end, a turf war is just another part of the job. Petty pranks, stolen laundry, and the occasional food fight keep the boredom at bay. And while rivalries may smolder all year long, nothing forges bonds faster than surviving a crackdown. Together against the world, and always ready to plot the next blue goat. Every few months, a new apprentice arrives, wide-eyed and clutching their best and only tunic. Their initiation is a blur of confusion, learning the house rules, dodging Brutuses. Tail, and realizing that cleaning duty means chasing chickens off the stairwell. Older workers share dire warnings. Never trust the soap, never sit on the good chair, and absolutely never ask what's in the cottage. By midnight, the apprentice is knee-deep in spilled ale half-dressed customers and more advice than they'll remember. By morning, survive your first night and you might just make it to payday, assuming you still want to. Let's start with arrival. The apprentice is greeted with a chorus of dubious enthusiasm from the regulars and a suspicious sniff from Brutus, who seems to know when someone's new and nervous enough to drop their bread crusts. They're shown to a room that's really a glorified storage corner, complete with a straw steam mattress, a single moth-bitten blanket, and a wardrobe consisting of whatever's in the laundry pile and doesn't currently walk away on its own. Training begins immediately. The madam runs through the house. Rules in a tone that brooks no nonsense. No free samples, no credit, no feeding the goat after dark. And if you hear singing past midnight, stuff your ears and run. The list grows longer as the older workers chime in, each adding their favorite cautionary tale. Beware the drafty window. The latch bites dot, always check the chamber pot before sitting. And remember that the rooster takes offense easily and bites harder. Their first assignment is almost always help in the kitchen. Here the apprentice is handed a spoon as long as their arm and put to work stirring a cauldron of pottage that's seen more ingredients than the town ledger. The cook, a fearsome woman with forearms like hams and a fondness for telling fortunes and vegetable scraps, offers encouragement in the form of shouted instructions and the occasional helpful whack with a ladle. If the apprentice asks what's in the stew, they're told, "Don't ask, just keep stirring." The evening crowd starts to trickle in. The apprentice is dispatched to deliver mugs of weak ale to tables full of customers who eye them like a new horse. At market, curiously, but with no intention of paying more for the upgrade, they learn the hard way that serving drinks is shorthand for dodging spilled ale, unsolicited advice, and hands that wander further than the conversation. Brutus, the house dog and bouncer, tests the new recruit's nerves by planting himself squarely in the busiest hallway and refusing to move unless bribed with sausage. The apprentice, clutching a mug and a prayer, must negotiate passage without losing either. If they pass this test, they're rewarded with a slobbery paw print on their tunic. Consider it a badge of honor. It's not long before the real chaos hits. Someone drops a tray of bread, a chicken escapes the pantry, and a regular decides now is the perfect time for a song. Despite the no singing after midnight rule, the apprentice finds themselves wrangling livestock, mopping up suspicious puddles, and fielding questions from guests who insist their room should come with less noise and more curtains. The older workers shout encouragement and occasionally duck behind the apprentice to avoid a particularly rowdy patron. Midnight arrives in a blur of exhaustion, confusion, and stray feathers. The apprentice is slumped against the wall, still, clutching their spoon, when the madam appears for the final inspection. "Still here?" she asks, eyebrows raised. "Didn't run for the hills? Good, you've got promise. Or you're just too tired to stand." By morning, the apprentice has learned more than any handbook could teach. They've discovered the secret to surviving the night. Keep your head down, your wits about you, and never, ever leave your shoes unattended. As the first rays of sun sneak through the grimy window, they realize they've earned their first true mark of brothel life, survival. Stick around long enough, and the chaos becomes routine. But nothing compares to your very first night. A baptism by spilled ale, bad jokes, and the undeniable feeling that if you made it through this, you can handle just about anything medieval life throws at you. When a medieval storm blows in, the brothel transforms into a ship caught in rough. Seas, buckets under every leak, rushes swept aside by muddy boots, and the unmistakable sound of the goat demanding higher ground. Candle flames gutter in the draft. The fire sputters, and everyone's clothes acquire a fresh layer of damp. The madam leads a midnight campaign of mop-wielding and window barricading, while Brutus sulks in the driest corner and the chickens roost on the bedposts. Spirits are kept afloat with strong ale and even stronger jokes. Because in a house where privacy is a myth and sleep is a rumor, you learn to weather every storm together. It starts with the wind, howling through the crypt alleyways and rattling the shutters with enough force to make even the bravest customer consider spending the night at church instead. The first fat drops of rain hammer the roof tiles, some intact, some only hanging. And out of habit, then find every possible crack, crevice, and conveniently forgotten hole. It's a brothel tradition. The moment the thunder rolls, someone shouts, "Bucket Brigade," and half the staff race to claim the driest spots, while the other